Hello and welcome to Audible River. I'm Alan Rice, and I am very happy to have with me natural philosopher Michael Alan Prestwood. And Michael is also an author whose recent book is called 30 Philosophers, A New Look at Timeless Ideas. And Michael is the creator of touchstonetruth.com, where you can find many engaging articles on philosophy, science, critical thinking, history, and even spirituality. Hi, Michael. How are you doing today?
I'm doing well, Alan. Thank you.
You know, I noticed that on your website, touchstonetruth.com, you got a recent article up called uh, "The Dawn of Secular Spirituality." Now, that's particularly interesting to me. What are you talking about there?
Well, there's an old debate going on with people with spirituality and science and religion, and it oftentimes feels like like everybody's trying to win, like religion's trying to squash science, and science is trying to say we're going to eventually have all the answers, and spirituality is out there saying nobody's going to have all of the answers and like that. So secular spirituality is really just science first spirituality.
And how would you? How does that work? What is science first spirituality? I mean, if I'm believing in, if I have spiritual beliefs, how would I use science to inform that? Help me with that.
Sure. So every belief you have is based on something. And so most people are, in our society, we kind of throw around terms like atheist and agnostic, spiritual and religious as kind of four categories that people say they are and that type of thing. And in my view of the world, I don't really look at it like that. I think people generally are pragmatic about their thoughts, which would include um, belief. And belief is you don't believe everything. Like very few people, even very spiritual people who put themselves forward as being extremely spiritual, when you talk to them and they might say something like oh, astrology is totally accurate and true, and so is Reiki, but crystal healing, that's bunk, that's crazy, there's no one believes, that doesn't work. So everybody kind of has their beliefs on a kind of an arching viewpoint, pragmatically,
Yeah.
as either an empiricist like me who's trying to live my life without any irrational categorized ideas, and or what I call a rational pragmatist, which is what most people are, where you tend to believe your eyes and ears and what you see, and you hold on to a few family religious ideas and a concept of a heaven, maybe hell too, and like that, and maybe even astrology, maybe even one or two other things. But beyond that short list, most people say like, no, 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 I don't. I'm not interested in that. And if you ask them, well, don't you think unicorns exist? They might say something like, well, no, I don't know, and I don't care. That's an agnostic viewpoint,
Okay.
and that's all agnosticism means.
And also too in this conversation, I think that in my mind, there was some distinction between what I would call religion and spirituality. And when I think about religion, um, I think that a lot of people we get religious training in our culture that we have in the world today, and for me that brings in morality, that there's ethics embedded in our religious beliefs, but it also kind of crosses over into philosophy as well, and that's I understand you have some expertise in that area. So how would you um, bring philosophy into this understanding of figuring out what's real and then coordinating that with our beliefs?
Sure. So, um, in my view, truth aligns with reality, and belief is your calibration of the ideas about truth. So, for example, um, disease kills people. The earth revolves around the sun. The earth is a globe, not a flat thing. Those things are all empirical truths that we can measure. And so those ones are pretty easy for most people to kind of see it over and over. The sun is always going to rise in the east and set in the west, type of thing. And they can say like, okay, I believe that. I have faith in that. And that's easy for me to believe in. And the other two categories philosophically, in addition to the empirical, which is like what we see, you have rational, which is our indirect ideas and descriptions of the material world. So they're indirect ideas about the empirical things that we see. So, for example, math is a rational idea. It's an indirect description of reality. When you say 2, 3, 4, you are that's indirectly referring to 2, 3, 4 of something, and it's an indirect description of reality. And then you have the irrational category, which is just a category. It's not meant to be an insult. It's just like when you break down and sort these ideas, you have to categorize them into buckets. And in the irrational category, you have speculative and disproven. And in my writing, I do tend to pick on astrology and say that astrology's been disproven over and over. And I use it as my one example. And so if you're into astrology out there, I also say that astrology also has pragmatic value to a lot of people. A lot of people enjoy it. It's social. They like exploring their identity and their self, utilizing astrology and like that. That's perfectly fine. But as far as buckets go, that one there are disproven things out there. And then there are speculative things is the other bucket inside the irrational. Speculative are things like the yet to be proven, the unknown, and the unknowable. And so, for example, string theory, which is a scientific theory with some gorgeous math behind it, is a speculative, irrational idea in natural philosophy because it has not been proven yet. It looks interesting, but it might go the way of numerology or any of the other pseudosciences out there. And people are working on it, and it might be proven at some point in the future, but right now it is speculative.
Right. I mean, we only, I mean, as we are, I mean, I would think that if you're looking at the history of humankind, our science is, in my estimation, very, very young. And the tools that we're developing to look at things and the means that we have and even our math, I think my opinion is that we're just at the beginning of figuring things out. And that there's obviously it leaves a lot of things open. So we're going to, bump into that. But one of the things that I was just thinking about is like, there are things that everybody experiences it's a personal experience and we just know it's real and you can't prove it, you can't explain it, like a dream. Like, so if I'm saying like I had a dream that I was eaten by a dinosaur, right? And it was real. It was real to me. I tell you, I was just like I was getting eaten by a dinosaur. There's no way I can prove that, but you know what? Most people would believe me because they have dreams too. It's relatable, but none of that is provable. So how would you talk about that if we have these kind of experiences that we can accept, but we can't prove they're true?
Sure. So let's frame meditation, for example.
Okay.
So meditation, people meditate and they claim it calms them down, calms their mind, and like that. And most of us believe that. I mean, it doesn't seem all that unreasonable.
Right.
So for something empirical like that we can measure, I mean, you could have somebody who's stressed out, hook a bunch of sensors to them and have them meditate and watch their blood pressure go down and like that. It's not hard to prove
Right.
meditation works. But some people who meditate claim the meditation takes them to another world,
Oh yeah.
another universe. And so for a extraordinary claim like that, that would require extraordinary evidence. So the level of evidence needed for something aligns with the complexity of the claim. So you saying that you had a dream that you were eaten by a dinosaur, you can't prove that to me, but I have no reason to doubt it. I have very common experiences like that that align with reality. I will have future dreams that align with reality like that, where I have things like that happen in my dreams. And so I have no reason to doubt that. And so I would accept that. And so the amount of evidence to what the claim is matters. And I will introduce one little concept here
Uh-huh.
early, and then I'll let you ask me more. But I would say that for me, find it I find aligning with reality a deeper spirituality than what a lot of my spiritual friends claim they have. And I don't mean that disparagingly. I'm just basically saying that there is an awful lot of awe and awful lot of things you can explore about yourself and about the material world realm that we live in, and the nature of reality and the nature of time, and that time travels forward only and not backward, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, there are so many empirical and rational ideas out there to explore that when it comes to the irrational things like string theory, I follow string theory and I'm hoping that they'll have a breakthrough, but I don't, I'm not invested emotionally in string theory for me. And I use string theory because that one's not too many people are going to get mad at me for saying string theory is speculative, but
Okay.
but as far as speculative ideas like Bigfoot and or ghosts or any beliefs like that, those fall into the speculative category, meaning we can't prove them. And one's belief in them is, as far as a personal belief goes, society should have nothing to say about that, because really each person has a conscience, and they have a right to their own conscience, and so they can believe what they want. Where it matters, though, is when it goes into public belief.
Oh, okay. So when it goes into public, well, I mean, just a second, I want to recap what you were just telling me, my impressions of what you were saying. And okay, I am impressed with what you were saying about your awe with just understanding what you know to be proven to be true. That it's an amazing experience just to take that in and experience that as reality. And I can definitely relate to that myself. I mean, and for me, I would say that yeah, I definitely have, I would say, a mystical background, and I, explore different beliefs, and I, because for me, I've had like a number of internal experiences and experiences in nature or whatever that I can't exactly explain. And what just happened? How did I perceive that? How did this thing come to me? And I want to be rational. I don't want to believe in something that's going to make me crazy or like not disconnect me. So that's the thing I'm worried about. It's being disconnected from what is actually happening because I'm caught up in my own head. Anyway, but that's my thing. Um, so um, now, but for me, I'm think that we're talking about the search for truth, and we're getting down to what is that exactly, and how do we know that we're searching for truth, and how finding out what is real, but then we've got our own system going where we're testing all the time. I think that's what I'm sort of spitballing here, like that's where the belief is. So I got these beliefs, I got this operating system of these things that I think might be true, and I'm going to like act as if they are, but then I'm going to run into things sometimes that's going to test that. And I'm like, oh, maybe it isn't true. And so that's where it gets hard for a lot of us, where we get challenged with our beliefs and have to adjust things. So if you want to comment on any of that, that'd be great. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. So, um, the spirituality is a personal exploration of the self. It has nothing to do with anybody else. So, one's spirituality needs to be honored. And so, your beliefs and your exploration of yourself and how that self relates to this realm, other realms, your experiences. That's a personal journey. I think sometimes we forget about that. So, and even I do too. Like in the past with my friends, they'll say, oh, I believe in this thing over here, and I won't say what it is just so I don't offend anybody. But I believe in this thing over here. It's totally true. And I'll go, really? how do you believe that? And and now what I'm trying to do in as I'm 61 years old now, and what I'm trying to do as I age is to not react like that, because who am I to say anything about their life and like that. So, but as a society, we have an obligation to each other. And so we have these things called public truth systems. In my writing, I call them truth hammers, science, law, and journalism. That these public truth systems gives us as a group a way for us to decide what is true within that framework. So within science, within law, within journalism, and within history, which is I consider history part of journalism. Same tool set.
Mhm.
And so what I believe will benefit society going forward over the next 50, 150 years or so is sorting of ideas, which in my column this month I said sorting of ideas. It sounds like a boring idea, but really it's not. I'm trying to talk people into give it a chance. But the proper sorting of ideas is what we must do in public, and what I would advise people to do in their own personal exploration of spirituality. And it's simple. There are just three categories. There's empirical, which is the things that you can repeatedly show other people and say, the moon is there, see it's there,
Mhm.
and like that. Rational are the indirect ones, things like math and just any indirect descriptions that don't directly describe something are rational ideas, rational frameworks. And then there's the irrational, which are the ones that are either speculative, meaning we can't prove them, but gosh, I personally think this one's true, and I don't think that one's true. And then there are the ones that where reality has pushed back. So in my writing, a direct answer to your question is you allow reality to push back or not. And
Oh.
so if you're not going to allow reality to push back, if you're going to say, nope, I don't believe in the moon, it doesn't exist, but it's right there, I'm not willing to look,
Uh-huh.
well, then the discussion's over. And so it all matters on whether or not you're willing to allow reality to push back.
I see that. You know what? Oddly, I was raised Christian, and so I got all these, biblical, teachings, stories of Jesus and that sort of thing. And actually, I have something Jesus said that popped in my mind that relates to what we're talking about. And he was asked, they were always trying to, these people who were trying to trap him into saying something that was going to get him in trouble, and they handed him oh yeah, they were asking him about paying taxes to the Romans, right? And then Jesus says, well, let me see your coin that you got there or whatever. And he says, okay, whose picture is this on the coin? And the questioner says, well, that's Caesar. And Jesus says, well, give to Caesar what is Caesar's and give to God what is God's. Now, in my mind, I'm seeing that as a clear delineation of Jesus is saying, like, these are completely different things I'm talking about. I'm talking about a spiritual life which has nothing to do with paying taxes. So so but I don't think that most people are looking at the teachings this way, or looking at. So I think that what happens so much over time with religion, because this is the public spirituality, which has become codified, so that what you were talking about is spirituality being an individual experience, that is something new, actually, I think, as a popular idea, like in the last, 100. I mean, as far as most people, because I think that what I understand historically is that people will ascribe to a religion, or to be part of a group, right? And that their beliefs are expected to conform with whatever that religion says is true. Uh, but that's kind of breaking down now as people are becoming more knowledgeable and given latitude to think for themselves. Um, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, your thought about Jesus and it is has been that thought echoed through history in many different ways. In my writing, I write a lot about it, about the separation of church and state,
Yeah.
about Roger Williams with his two tables, where the first four commandments are God's realm, and the other six are human realm. And he has a parable called the parable of the ship, where he says, imagine uh, Christians of all types, Catholics and Protestants and like that, and Muslims and Jews and atheists and other, whatever other spirituality religions you can think of, all hop on a boat and they're trying to cross the sea. For that journey across the sea, they must live together. And so the captain of the ship, um, Roger Williams argued 400 years ago, should not force everybody to go to Christian mass, or or any mass at all. If And that the captain's role is to keep everybody safe, make sure everybody's contributing, and get them from point A to point B. And his point, that point that he wrote in the 1600s, Thomas Jefferson echoed in 1804. Roger Williams wrote about it as a hedge between the wilderness and the city and society. I mean, and Thomas Jefferson wrote about it as a wall that separates church and state. So, so that idea carried through to it's written in our Constitution, and it's propagated around the world. The idea of freedom of conscience and the idea of freedom of speech. Yes, we argue about it and debate it, and some countries do it better than others,
Yeah.
but it is out there, and I think it will always be out there. And so, that part of it, I think, is maybe not settled, but on its way to being settled. Um, and the other thing you talked a little bit about was spirituality. On that, I would say that, we've always had religions in various parts of the world, and a small percentage of human beings have been religious in one particular religion at a time, while everybody else was in their own little religions, and spirituality, and people were spiritual in their own little spiritual realms. So I would push back a little bit on the spirituality aspect of it. I think um, at the point where human beings evolved a brain that can ponder the night sky, and like that, and ask odd questions, that we've been spiritual. And I think that it is true that during the Middle Ages, Europe became uh, religion, kind of dominated more than it should have. Burning at the stake a, Bruno,
Yeah.
a, uh, a leader in their community, just because he questioned some ideas.
Right.
Probably not the wisest decision in the world.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And I guess that's what's on my mind is that kind of religious oppression that and I think in some we're still kind of that idea or the feeling of it is still present. I think with a lot of people, and I talk to people who have left certain churches because they felt that they couldn't be accepted as who they were in that church, and they would find someplace else they could worship and feel more at home. And so I think there's a lot of adjustments that are going on, and it does have to do, of course, with this acceptance of freedom of religion, the freedom of speech, and freedom of ideas. But I am a little more curious to get a little more detail about exactly what you're calling spirituality. You were talking about it's our I forget exactly the words used, but it's about our inward looking. We'll just say that looking in ourselves to understand ourselves. Um, what more could you say about that you would define? I mean, okay, you could just say, well, I'm going to a therapist to do that. I mean, what I call it spirituality, right? So I'm doing like Jungian psychology. So where does it like not psychology anymore and it's actual spirituality? Is that a fair question?
Oh yeah, sure, of course. Um, you know, so your worldview is your lens looking out into the world.
Uh-huh.
It's you have a worldview. You were raised a certain way. You believe certain things, and when you see things happening out in the world, you're looking through your worldview, your lens. Your identity is how you look at yourself in that world, your how you think of yourself moving throughout reality. The your spirituality, well, spirituality generally, I consider it to be a personal journey, exploring the self. And I boil it down that short because the rest of it just kind of flows, right? You know,
Hmm.
it's the how does your how does the self relate to the universe? Um, with myself, do I personally believe that there's a an afterlife? And if I do believe there's an afterlife, do I subscribe to the Christian heaven or the Muslim type of afterlife or the Buddhist that you just have an essence, a non-self essence that goes, you know, so you explore all of these things. And so when I boil it down to, you know, it's a personal journey into the self, I'm really just saying, trying to set up the idea that everybody stay away. Everybody has a right to their own personal journey.
Yeah.
If you want to talk about it and bring it out into the public, that's fine. You could ask somebody, you know, hey, how do you feel? What do you think? Do you think this, that, or the other? And you can have nice conversations about that, but you need to keep in mind that each person's spirituality is their own. That's different than public belief or in our public truth systems where spirituality creeps into enforcement of others. Like when your personal spirituality is used to cause harm to somebody else, I think that's universally a sin. That's not, you don't need God or anything like that to define sin. You can see it when you cause harm to other people. And so I think that's kind of the big distinction between spirituality and a kind of a self journey with that. I do talk a lot about secular spirituality, which is kind of a different thing.
Yeah.
And I talk about empirical, rational, and irrational spirituality, when that's yet another thing, and like that. But as far as spirituality itself goes, I consider that the main point to remember there is that each of us is entitled to our thoughts.
Each of us is entitled to our thoughts and to recognize our own journey, our own experience as our as that's we own that. Is that's kind of what I'm getting is I and to have that and to honor that in other people and to recognize that in ourselves. And so what I'm picking up here is that what you're talking about as a spiritual life doesn't require any supernatural belief. No, it doesn't actually require a religion to template over that because the spiritual life is just going to happen if you ask questions or try to figure out who you are. Is that
Whether, yeah, I think spirituality is kind of the big umbrella. Secular spirituality is what you're talking about now.
is it?
Secular
Okay.
spirituality is science first spirituality where you go through a sorting process. The sorting process I already talked about empirical, rational, and irrational, where you kind of sort the various claims into various buckets. That's secular spirituality. That's not spirituality. Spirituality is the bigger umbrella. For the bigger umbrella, I fully support people believing whatever they want. Supernatural, believe in Santa Claus, unicorns,
Hmm.
anything people want. And I know I'm using absurd examples on purpose, of course, because that gives us the freedom of not aligning ourselves too closely with a European view of religion or spirituality, right? So
Right, right.
that's why I use ridiculous examples.
Okay, okay. So kind of what I'm beginning to get a picture here that what I'm getting from you is something that kind of feels complex on the surface, but actually feels whole when you take it all in. That we've got, we may have individual experiences, but secular spirituality is going to be probably an important aspect of everyone's understanding, no matter what you're believing. That you also understand what the secular aspect of your spiritual journey is, and what. So, okay, Now, let me see if I get this clear. So secular spirituality, and then you talk about public spirituality. There's a distinction between these two. So let's go back and like talk about that a little bit.
Sure. Um, and yeah, and let me just say that this month's column is talking about secular spirituality as something that I think we're going to embrace as the generations go on. So, like, if you look at the beliefs of older people, not us, we're not old. I mean, older
Much,
people.
much older than us, right?
Yeah, way older than us. And then you look at the beliefs of young people, but you also can go back in time. Like you take the beliefs of the older people in society, and
Yeah.
then you go back to when they were teenagers and young people, and you take their grandparents and great grandparents who are still alive and their views. So each generation has embraced it. You know, there's a time the Catholic Church put Galileo in prison for simply looking through a telescope and observing nature and saying, "Hey, it looks to me like we're on a globe and that the Earth is not flat and that the Earth revolves around the sun." And they put him in prison for that. And that was in the 1632-ish,
Hmm.
and it wasn't until 1820 that they accepted that. So even though you could directly observe it, it took hundreds of years to do that. And really, what was going on there is a little bit morbid, but basically, as people who were unchangeable in their beliefs died out, the younger ones came up and said, "Yeah, I looked through that telescope and I do see that. Tell me more about that. I got to reconcile that." And
Yeah.
so secular spirituality is simply that reconciling. And I personally believe that sorting is what's going to happen. I personally believe that religions will, 500 years from now, religions will still be around. They'll still be exploring the unknown and the unknowable. They'll still be talking about other realms because we can't prove or disprove those.
Hmm.
And so there's nothing wrong with those having a life and like that. But I also do think we will sort and agree on the empirical stuff. I
Right.
mean, if you can see it, you can prove it. We that's our common ground of where we that we stand on.
Right. Yeah. And you know what? I really appreciate what you're saying because in my as I've gotten older and I've talked earlier about my personal experiences that are weird or whatever, but this is the way I usually talk about them. Is like I don't know if this is real or not. All I can say is that this is what I experienced. I don't know how to say where it came from or what it was. All I can say is that this happened and this is how I felt during it. Uh, so
Yeah.
right.
So in my framework, what I would encourage you to do is to sort it.
Yeah. Okay.
So you sort your ideas, sort those things as part of the process. You sort the things that are empirical, the things that are rational, and the things that are irrational and then you look at whether they're speculative or disproven. If they're disproven, you have to decide whether they have a pragmatic view, pragmatic usage for you, and you want to hang on to it anyways, and there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
And if it's speculative, eh, it's at least as good as string theory. And look how many hours of YouTube videos are out there on every little aspect of string theory.
Uh-huh. But at least understanding where your ideas stand, how they stack up against what's provable. So the provable thing is okay. I'm seeing like there's a spectrum of our experiences, in that we're trying to you know for me it's like becoming an effective human. How do I how can I make my life more real, more effective, being more me or whatever? But uh, accepting what is real is a big part of it. And how do I sort that out? Now, you in your articles you bring up ontology. So tell me about that and how that relates to what we're talking about.
I brought up what?
Ontology, ontology.
Ontology.
Yes.
Oh, ontology. Yeah,
Yeah. There you
sorry.
go. That's okay.
Yeah, so metaphysics is the study of reality and whether there are realms or not, and the makeup of the world is in philosophy and religion. It deals with substances. Is there one substance that is intertwined throughout everything, including all the realms, heaven, souls, spirits, everything is one substance, or is it two substances? Is there this realm and that realm? And like that. So that's metaphysics. A subcategory of metaphysics is the nature of those things. So when what is the true nature of numbers? What is the true nature of an animal? What is the true nature of the of reality? What does it mean for something to exist? That's basically what an ontology is.
And so, how would you apply that to? And give me an example of how you would apply that.
Well, or apply it to what? The to sorting of ideas or to spirituality or what?
Yeah, okay, let's start with sorting ideas. So the nature of something. And so I'm just want to, like anybody listening, like how would I begin to be certain I'm looking at the nature of something. So how do I know what I'm looking for to understand the nature of a thing?
Sure. So there's this. So as the centuries have rolled on, we've learned a lot, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we've just learned a whole lot. There's this gentleman called Karl Popper who just passed away I say just because of our age, in 1992.
Yeah,
uh,
yesterday.
and he lived like over 90 years. I think he was born in 1898. But anyways,
Uh-huh.
Karl Popper had his has brought a new idea to the public, and he said uh, that the idea that something is falsifiable gives it truth. So for him, and it's part of my framework. It's part of the empirical category in particular, and it also has a seat at the table for disproving the irrational stuff too.
Hmm.
So it's I've applied all these things to the full spectrum of human thought. And so Karl Popper's falsifiability basically just says that if something is falsifiable, it is scientific.
Yeah.
If you're anti-science, realize what he's saying is that he's talking about alignment with reality. If something is falsifiable, it aligns with reality, meaning if something is not falsifiable, like unicorns is not falsifiable, so
Oh.
it's not a scientific thing. It's the day we discover a unicorn, either fossils or alive or whatever, frozen or whatever, that would be a glorious day. That's when it would go from the speculative
Uh-huh.
to something that is just unknowable,
Hmm.
to being all the way to being empirical in
Okay.
an instant.
Right.
Um, but the things that are not falsifiable, like you can't disprove the existence of Santa Claus.
Okay.
Again, I use extreme examples so that as to not offend anybody, because personally, you have a right to your own conscience, period.
Right.
Uh, but publicly, we have to have common ground. And so all we're talking about is what is our common ground? And if our common ground needs to be something that we can all stand on. And then from there, people are free to go wherever they want. So on the common ground, things like Santa Claus um, are not falsifiable. We can't disprove it or prove the existence of Santa Claus. If Santa Claus ever shows up, that would be a glorious day too.
Yes, I'm waiting for that one. Yes, to
Yeah.
see Santa Claus. I'm pretty sure that I heard him on my roof when I was 5 years old. So,
Yeah, I'm positive you did. Now,
yes.
Santa Claus in that case may have been your mom and dad getting out on the roof and stomping around, but I don't know.
Yeah. No, don't ruin it for me now, Michael.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I take that back.
No, that's okay. Um, considering all this, and in your article, you talk about, and what you just said is like you're looking at this thoughts, this concept of secular spirituality growing through our culture, through our understanding, and that's a kind of an exciting thing for me because I'm imagining like a freer, more accepting world if we can. develop a system like what you're talking about, we have a way of identifying, well, what can we all agree on that we know is proven and real? And then the things that we just hold dear to, we want to believe in Santa Claus, that we will accept that okay, you can believe that, and then I'm going to believe this, and we just know what that means. We just know that that's yours, this is mine, and we're going to accept that with each other. um, this is
And we have a common ground that we come back to.
and
We have a
right.
common ground that we that we get across the ocean, the ship across the ocean with, while you go ahead and get with like-minded people and believe anything you want. That's perfectly fine. And we don't make fun of it. That's a
Right.
personal journey. I don't know that. I can't disprove that. I don't
Right.
know,
Right.
you know.
Yeah. Well, I think that you got, for me, it sounds like you're like working on a really beautiful philosophy right here. I mean, so how would you, I mean, to me, I'm thinking, what is philosophy? Is that like you're figuring out yeah, your rules for living, or, your theories about what's true and what's not and how you're going to act? How would you define philosophy?
It's an exploration of the big questions of life. Um, I guess the longer answer would be that um, it's a framework. So I once had a friend of mine say that philosophy is just vocabulary. And he said each philosopher just defined a bunch of vocabulary words and called it their philosophy. And I said to him, I said, okay, I know that you're very Christian. He's very Catholic in his particular case. And I said, would you say that Catholicism is just a bunch of vocabulary words? And he
Ah.
said, well, no, of course not. It's in a vocabulary is part of it. It's one lens of it. You
Hmm.
can, if you define 100 Catholic words and you understand them well, wow, that's a pretty thorough view. Probably a better understanding than most Catholics would have of it. But it's more than that. It's the interrelation between those words. It's the framework is about how everything interacts and like that. And so philosophy is the exploration of frameworks. So whether they're
Oh.
religious, a tradition, scientific, journalism, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's a field or a topic, it's in my view, it's philosophical.
Oh, interesting. Okay. All right. Well, that's a very interesting way of looking at that. So we do have to, we're all developing philosophies then, aren't we? I mean, because we have to,
Yes.
right, because it's
Yeah,
essential.
in 30 philosophers, I say your worldview is your personal language, your personal religion,
Yeah.
and your personal philosophy. I do go on to say that's too abstract, of course, but it's a nice way to abstract it. If you think about the words you use,
Yeah.
the religion or hardcore beliefs you have, and your philosophical views of society, that's a pretty good summary of your worldview, and like that.
Wow. Yeah. You mentioned your book, and we talked about that in a different podcast, but I just want to bring it up again. I love your book because the 30 philosophers, the way that go through time and like, stack up how all these ideas have progressed through history. And it's a beautiful book. And if anybody's curious about how we've developed, our ideas of how to live, Michael's book, 30 philosophers is amazing. I would recommend it. Um, so one of the things that is curious to me, it seems like we often we develop. I'm calling them non-negotiable beliefs. Things that's my word for it. That there are things that we hold to be true that we can't prove, and that we'll just never give it up. And that seems like I would just venture to say that for most of us, these are the core ideas that we've developed from early in our life that we stack everything else onto, and we can't challenge those things. What do you have any thoughts about that? Because sometimes I think some of these things need to get challenged, but we're just not going to go there.
Well, I mean, you know, in a whole bunch of aspects of life, whether it's AA, religion,
Yeah.
therapy. They all have a core tenet that they believe in, which is I cannot force you to fix you. Only you can fix you. And so you have to want to change in order to change.
Hmm.
And there's an awful lot of religion and and recovery programs and philosophies that all center around the idea that um, you should look at yourself. I mean, we many of us have are introduced to Socrates, who's basically, his whole thing was, why do you believe that? What is that about?
Uh-huh.
And self-analysis. And so that would be point number one. Point number two is my view is that there's such a thing as freedom of conscience. That's the thing that Roger Williams wrote about. That was an extension of what you were talking about with Jesus.
Hmm.
That thought propagates through history, and at the point where you're not allowing people to have their own thoughts,
Oh.
that's not a good thing. So the other thing I would say is that unless that person brings it to you, like if somebody stops you on the street and says, again, I'm going to be absurd because I don't want to offend anybody, says, Santa Claus is coming this Christmas, you better be good. Let me tell you about Santa Claus. At that point, they're stepping into the public realm, into public belief. They stepped out of self-analysis, out of a personal spiritual journey, and they are interacting with others. At that point, you can sort it, you can engage, you can walk away, you can do anything you want. But I would encourage people to not do that. Like throughout my life, I've frequently gotten arguments with people about all this stuff.
Right.
And one of the things I always say is that remember, I'm just here living my life. You came to me. I'm just responding to you
Right.
and answering your questions. And I've been called things like not spiritual and closed-minded. And it's like, no, I accept your viewpoint. I have mine. I'm more than willing to analyze anything that you want me to, but I've kind of gone through that. I mean, I don't need to look again at astrology to
Yeah.
know that it's been disproven over and over and over again.
Yeah.
I don't need to do that. So if somebody comes to me about astrology, remember, I respect their beliefs. So I try not to say, as I get older, I'm trying not to react and say, "Oh my God, you believe in that?" I just say like, "Oh," I just ask them questions,
Yeah.
and that applies to I mean, everybody believes. Well, most people believe crazy things. I mean,
Yeah.
in writing 30 Philosophers, and looking at Pythagoras and Aristotle, I mean, every single person also had a bunch of stuff that was crazy.
Yeah.
I chose not to write about any of that because I don't think that carries weight when you're telling the story of human thought through time.
Uh-huh.
I just presented the stuff that lasted, and so I think we need to allow people to. My second point is just freedom of conscience. Just allow people to believe what they're going to believe. It only impacts you when it's thrust upon you, or when it's thrust upon the public, or when it's used to establish a new law,
Mm.
or anything like that. That's entering the public realm, and we all have a say about that.
Hmm.
And I think we really need to keep our feet on the ground and do those types of things from a common base.
Yes, a common base, a common understanding and respect for one another, a civility that we all agree on is important to the enjoyment of life, right? That's yeah. I think that's something that we really need to get back to. I mean, like as far as well, when I say get back to, is that we're living in a time right now,
No, I agree.
and our
I miss the you don't talk about sex, religion, or what was the
religion,
third one?
sex, and politics, right?
Yeah, yeah. Don't talk about that stuff. And what that was about was the same thing we're talking about here, which is
Yeah,
freedom of conscience.
yeah,
Let people be a Trumpster or a Republican or a Democrat or a liberal or a Muslim or whatever. tree hugging, whatever,
Uh-huh.
it doesn't matter. Let them be, and don't discuss it. And if you do discuss it, it should be done with much respect.
Right. And so, but, and I may be getting a little out of our range of topics here, but it makes me think about you know I think about the complexity of how am I talking about like conscious development, like maturity of being able to accept other ideas. I mean, being able to grow in wisdom enough to be comfortable with understanding that there's other people who don't believe like I do, and like I don't feel threatened by that, because I think that I get the feeling that a lot of people are living in a space where they need other people to agree with them. That's part of what they believe, and that it's and I don't know where that comes from. If it's something that people were trained into, or if it's a maturity thing, social, I mean, society wise. But I know that when people are thinking like that I've got to get other people to agree with me, or else it feels threatening and that's the sense I get is that it feels threatening to some people who feel that way, not to have other people to agree. But then we have you and me are sitting here saying like, well, of course other people are different. Well, of course, and like you're talking about, well, as I age, right? And me the same thing. Like I have far less arguments with people as I get older because I know they just don't end well. And no, and I usually don't learn much by arguing with people. I learn more from finding out like, well, why do you think that? Or like, how long have you believed this? And like not judging, but getting to know what the other person's experience is. And I find that far more enriching than trying to impress them with what I believe or think they should believe. So what are your thoughts about all that?
Well, in modern times, we have this bias called confirmation bias,
Oh yeah.
where we want to, Fox News, people watch Fox News, liberals watch MS Now, and Facebook has even separated everybody out into their own little corners, and everybody's more than content to live in their own little corners. On this subject, what I like to think about myself, and I sometimes talk about it, is um, many of us have said at some point, wow, everybody needs to travel. I mean, when you travel and you go to another country and see just things being different, it opens the mind. And I like to talk about the word egg, for example, is an English word that we use, but in the I think it was around 16 or 1700s or so. Um, the word egg was used in one part of England, but 8 miles away it was a different word. And so if you
Ah.
went 8 miles, you couldn't even ask for eggs, that type of a thing.
Uh-huh.
And up until recently, it was very hard to get out of your own culture. So you were born and raised and died in one culture, but with a bunch of people who believed exactly, one set of beliefs, and you never encountered anything else. So on the occasion when two cultures intermingled, it was a collision.
Oh.
And over time, that's gotten better. And I think the good news here is that I really think that's getting much, much better. I think we very much understand what's going on now. And I think with each generation, we're learning about tolerance more and more as a society. And I do think that um, we've made great progress. And I do think within 100, 150, 200 years, our ability to sort ideas will be the key for freedom of conscience, for religions to thrive, for spirituality to thrive, for science to thrive, for the public truth systems to thrive, for us all to live together. I honestly do believe we're on the right path. We've got some bumps going on right now, but
Yeah.
I do believe, and it will be a rocky road, of course, going there, but on that journey. But I do honestly think that we're on our way.
That's a very hopeful message. And you know what, Michael, I tend to agree with you too. That I mean, we're in a rocky spot, but I see a lot of hopeful activity going on. I see people from all sides. Actually, I hear people voicing opinions that, hey, you know what? I think we need to talk to each other more. I think we need to work things out in a different way. There are people who are changing their minds about the conflict that we've kind of gotten embedded into, and I think that the lesson is kind of getting through that tolerance maybe is a little more easier to live with. you know.
Yeah, and it's hard to get there too. Like when Facebook first came on, we all found our high school friends and stuff, and that was a blast.
Yeah.
And then somehow it became okay to talk about politics. We all argued, and
Yeah.
I think we're kind of evolving past that. Like, okay, wait. The old way was right. Let's go back to the not talking. We don't have to talk about every issue with every person we've ever known since high school on Facebook. Yeah. So
Uh-huh.
I think we're learning our lessons as we go.
And Michael, the thing I want to close with here is I want you to give us some advice on how to get more information or training on this whole sorting of ideas, or the sorting of information, the sorting of the things that the concepts, what you were talking about. Is you have information on your website that you could point us to, or references that, because I think this is something that would be worth kind of, because the things that you mentioned, they just roll off your tongue, right? Because you know this stuff really well. But somebody listening may want to like look into it a little bit deeper to get like, okay, what's the differences in these things, and how do I sort my ideas? How do we do that again?
Yeah. So I guess my advice would be to embrace critical thinking.
Okay.
People exercise their muscles
Yeah.
in order to get them stronger, and your brain is the same way. If you exercise it, you get more out of it. And critical thinking traditionally has been the thing that everybody talks about is embracing. I do have a critical thinking framework on my at touchstonetruth.com. When you go there, you see think well, live well are the two paths that you'll see right up front. There are a bunch of topics to explore. I do have this thing called the TST trainer, which allows you to listen on the go to this type of stuff, and has flashcards and study and various things to study and like that on there. And it's but the main idea is to embrace the separation of church and state,
Okay.
embrace the separation of you from others, and respect the right of others to believe whatever they want, as long as they don't harm anyone, is so that you can protect your right to believe what you want to believe.
I love this. This is a great philosophy, Michael. That's, yeah. See what you just said. See, I want that. I'm going to put that on a poster, right? I'm going to hang it up in
Awesome.
my office. I'm going to give it to all my friends. Okay. Hey, thank you. This has been great. I love talking with you, Michael. This has been wonderful. All
All
right.
right. Thank you, Alan.
You are very.
Appreciate it.
Hey, thank you.
All right.
And that is all for this episode of Audible River. Wherever you are on this wonderful planet, we would love to know what you think about our podcast. So please leave a comment or email us at audibleriverpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening.